first ferry at 7 a.m. took us off Vancouver Island to the mainland. Then we drove to the long-term parking at Vancouver Airport. We said a final goodbye to everything Canadian, including Tim Hortons coffee shop. It's about 10 hours to London. The map display doesn't make the time pass any more quickly. We cross Greenland and Iceland, thinking that the two engines should just about make it to Gatwick Airport. This isn't the end of our journey. A British Sun flight takes us to southern Portugal in 2.5 hours. We land at the tiny airport at Faro and take the 1-hour drive in a rental car to Lagos, which is about 100 kilometers to the west. Lagos is wonderfully located where a large river flows into the Atlantic Ocean. It's a very old town with minimal tourist development for these parts. The harbour is full of big boys' toys that seem to brave the open Atlantic only rarely. We were joined for a week by Valerie and Alan from Toronto. They arrived via Lisbon. You only have to look down into the water to understand the second industry after tourism. It's fish. These are sardines. Here's part of the modern-day fishing fleet. Gulls are everywhere, of course. These are small boats. Just a very few of the much older and even smaller boats remain. We'll see them later. The old town of Lagos still has its defensive walls intact on the 3 sides facing towards the land. There never was a wall along the riverside. Exploring is fun as long as you do it on foot. This is not for vehicles. Even scooters are strangely rare just here. The use of tiny paving stones is universal, and the patterns are really great. Churches seem forlorn these days in many parts of Europe. We never knew Portugal had 2 time zones as displayed here. The Algarve is well known for its endless sunshine, and it never let us down. The hats were Chinese, of course. We walked into the current-day central square. The building straight ahead was the old slave market. It was actually the first one in Europe. It's an artist gallery today. Like the slave market, the church is also a gallery. All of these buildings are relatively new for Europe. There was a large earthquake in 1755 and the whole lot fell down. There used to be a palace here for the youngest member of the Portuguese royals. Besides the endless sunshine, the Algarve is also known for its high temperatures. We are here in September, and high temperatures are only in the upper 20s. The Brits who pack this coast in midsummer come to escape their challenging weather at home, and likely spend the whole time moaning about the blistering temperatures here that can reach the upper 30s. So let's say something about the youngest royal. He was Henry, better known as Henry the Navigator. Not only the 3rd child, he was also the 3rd son. Just like our Queen Elizabeth's 3rd son, Edward, he clearly needed to get a job, and there was no future in being just a royal. Fortunately for Portugal, he did get a job, and he left an amazing legacy. So more about Henry later. We're headed through the leafy streets, right to the dead centre of town. Actually, we're going to a church. It's early morning and the old lady hasn't arrived yet to unlock the gates, so one just waits. We're headed first up this tower. It's another dysfunctional church clock, but we came for the view over the rooftops of Lagos. Time stops anyway in this sleepy spot. We're on holiday. The streets here are narrow and often quite steep along the cliffs that form the original riverbank on its western side. There are some nice private rooftop patios. Many of these places are holiday rentals. The absence of high-rise buildings is a delight in this town. The next town to the east is Portimao, and it's packed with multi-story condos. Over in the distance is the 4-kilometre-long main beach right in town. The old lady has indicated that we should pay a visit to somewhere up these stairs. Wonder why she was laughing. It looks as if the church is clearly in contact with a higher being. Valerie looks as if she knows the story by now. Who would have guessed an ossuary? I bet this lot came down in the earthquake. You never know who'll finish up next to you after that sort of a shake-up. This is no longer an active church. Wonder who the old lady collects the admissions for. Some of the decorative tile work is very nice. We happily joined the world of the living, but it was a fun experience. We're off to the fish market. This looks like one of their regular customers, so we'll follow along. The streets here are usually quite steep and always very narrow. It doesn't say no cars anywhere, but we get the message. Tucked into these exciting streets are countless restaurants. Val and Al gave their credit card a workout at this upmarket place. There are eateries for every taste. We all ate at this place on one occasion. Someone has to find work for itinerant Australian hippies. Very little of the old external tile work remains, although it is widely used indoors. This work on the staircase up to the market is modern, of course. The market is stunning. Whatever are all these fish varieties? Valerie learns how to tell really fresh fish by the extent to which their eyes bulge outward. There's produce too. Joan went exploring. Look at her discovery. They're figs with almonds placed around them to represent petals. We took a look at the upper floor. You can look over to the marina and the fish dock.
That fresh vegetable is really nice now.
Oh, yes.
So we saw a slab of tuna like this.
Oh, yeah. We saw them in slices.
Yeah.
Here are the trawlers unloading a fresh catch where we saw them earlier. We left the market and headed for the German bakery. Strange, really. We never saw the cat at the market, but he's here at the bakery. This is our apartment, with its pool and great patio, with the private entrance just up the little flight of steps. You immediately assume it's all brick, but this is Portugal. It's actually totally faced with tile. We're planning a big trip for the next day. Alan is watching over his master controller, the iPhone. Similar degree of control, just a different church from where we were earlier. Anyway, tomorrow we're going west, first to Salima. This tiny Algarve town has the distinction of being the only one left with any semblance of its original character before tourism struck. It has all the right ingredients to qualify as the old Algarve: cats, fishing boats, no harbour, and a nice sand beach with cliffs. Boats are pulled onto the beach with a tractor. The fishermen's houses are colourful and, of course, very small. Cats are everywhere here. They're slim and have glossy coats that result from a diet of 100% fish. People watch the nets being cleaned of fish. A slow process, and on this day a very poor catch as well. The gulls also watch, of course. Maybe this boy dreams of one day getting into the fishing business. Actually, it's more likely he'll get an iPad before an e-pad. Watch the fishermen now and treasure the memory, because the old Algarve is nearly gone. We took a walk up the beach and soon came to something quite remarkable. Joan is walking in dinosaur footprints. This is an idyllic beach, and the whole atmosphere of the place is lovely. An invitation to walk. Everyone feels the same. Val and Alan are catching the bug too. We're headed out to the west, just about as far as we can go anyway. The town in our sights is Sagres. Over 500 years ago, this was one of the most important places anywhere. This was Henry the Navigator's sailing school. At that time it was the end of the known world. Overland routes were known to Asia and India, but what lay over the western horizon was totally unknown. It's pretty sketchy what went on here. What, for example, is this apparent compass rose laid out in cobbles and gravel on the ground?
Others speculate it's a large sundial.
No lesser authority than Rick Steves' guidebook doesn't offer very much insight.
You could cast a shadow on the dial straight.
One of the outcomes of training here was that sailors started to record everything. The captain's log, still used to this day on the Starship Enterprise, is a direct result of Henry's orders. In the distance is Cape Vincenti, the most westerly part of Europe. We've gone over to watch something quite exciting now. We're looking down at fish, large ones in the sea far below. These guys have apparently chosen between one of Henry's small ships and a sure footing on terra firma. I wouldn't be too sure if I were them. Henry's crews made a beeline for the church before setting sail. Very wise. This is a windswept promontory. Wild narcissus grow here. Never mind about the wind. Where's the soil? Think how we nurse these plants in our gardens. This is it, the short path to the one-time end of the world. Now the story really begins. It's not all about European settlement of the Americas. We'll come to that in a moment. Alan needs a photo to remember this place. This is Vasco da Gama, a pupil at the sailing school here. Henry died in 1460. 38 years later, Vasco da Gama, a Portuguese, sailed into Calicut on the western shores of India just south of Goa. He came via a very indirect and long route over most of the southern Atlantic and finally round the Cape and across the Indian Ocean. His ships were about 100 tons, called caravels. 6 years earlier, Columbus left Cadiz in Spain. 2 of his ships were tiny caravels also. Although he never touched the shores of mainland America, he named it after a buddy of his, and he knew enough to find his way back home, and indeed back to America again. Little of substance is known about Columbus. He was from Genoa. He had a Portuguese wife, and he spoke fluent Portuguese. Did he attend the sailing school? Cadiz is so close to Sagres. Anyhow, regardless of the answer, nobody doubts that it was Henry the Navigator who paved the way for European migration to the Americas. There certainly was more than just endless sun and beaches on the Algarve. The world was forever changed as a result of events here in the 15th century. But just one last look at the sea and the beaches of the Algarve. There is something quite special we save for the end. Superb beaches, safe swimming, all that's a given here. These are not like the organised beaches of many places in Europe, with their bars, lounges, and umbrellas for rent. Amazing peace by the waterside. Have a cool Atlantic dip if you like. The water temperature is about 20 degrees. Some beaches are expansive and gently sloping, like this one at Lagos. This is also right in town. We drove to other beaches. You can see the packed parking lot here. We had beach mats and an umbrella provided in the apartment. Some beaches have really tasteful facilities, and this is an amusing early morning activity caught on camera. Another tranquil and spacious beach with first-rate sands, toys for every taste. Great surf sports for the adventurous too. But everything changes in one small part of the Algarve, and that's the part close to Lagos and our apartment. There are caves, sea stacks, sea arches, and these incredibly coloured cliffs. We went down to take a trip, to get a different perspective on this coast, if you like. We picked the tide conditions and the lighting just right, and we hired this guy to show us the sights. These are very sturdy boats, but they have switched from catching fish to catching tourists. Some of the caves and channels are exciting from a small boat. The whole trip had taken an amusing turn. Our skipper knew no English. All he knew was the English noun or proper name describing the likeness of the shape of the sea stacks or rock formations. "Charles de Gaulle!" he cried. Then just as suddenly, "Elephant!" Fortunately, we've forgotten many of the shapes we are supposed to have recognized. We love these pocket beaches, and we are off to visit 2 of them as soon as we get ashore. We were out about 35 minutes, which was reasonable for a private trip. We liked it. At least he'll never know what we were laughing at. So here's the most famous pocket beach of them all. 180 steps down, and there are just about the same number coming back up. This gets super crowded at weekend. The Spaniards come, as Portugal is cheap in their eyes. Some come by sea as well, just to augment the crowds, and larger tour boats can disgorge their cargoes also. The adventure advertised on this boat may well relate to the issue of finding a place to sit on the beach. The coastal scenery is certainly stunning, but wait one day and drive less than 5 minutes to this pristine beach. A wholly different experience for sure, although the swimming is not too good because of the rocks. Early visitors rush around to get the idyllic photos before more umbrellas arrive, but even packed full by the standards of this beach is a whole different thing from the previous one. Here's the easy part of the day. No requests for stair climbing photos, please. Joan shows a commendable skill in setting up our beach camp. And now it's time for turning off the commentary and letting the natural audio provide the accompaniment.